Hi, I'm Jami Amerine, author, speaker, artist, wife, mom, and friend. This week's episode is Overcoming the Holiday Blues, Debunk Your BaHumbug. Today's episode is brought to you by independent beauty consultant Jennifer Willerton, the only person I trust with my face. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1. Let's get this thing started. Hello, friend. This is Jami Amerine, author and blogger at Sacred Ground Sticky Floors. Today's podcast is called Overcoming the Holiday Blues, Debunk Your BaHumbug. Let me start by saying I am so sorry that it took me so long between seasons. We've been sick, and after recording this episode the first time, it disappeared. So now we are going to try it again. Here's take 2. Click. 'Tis the season. Drudging through the hard parts of the holidays seems to be the resounding gong I am hearing from so many of you. Wow, guys. First, let me just take a second to say, please continue and feel free to email me. I love hearing from you. I love praying with you and for you. And I appreciate all of your prayers and concerns for me as well. So keep them coming. It is balm to my soul to know that I'm not alone and to join you in praying to our Jesus for change. But it has been a rough few months around here. To say I'm run down and worn out is an understatement. I'm run down and worn out. But I just did a recording with my friend Nikki Hardy. Nikki is a writer, a blogger. She's about to have her first book come out. She's a cancer survivor and a pastor's wife, and she's just the neatest person. Y'all are just going to love her. I'm going to link her below. She has a really cool British accent that I can't get enough of, and she recently had a panel discussion on holiday struggles. She invited me to put my 2 cents in, which I either completely depleted the account or added to it. I'm not sure which. I haven't listened yet, but I was a wreck. You know, those situations you find yourself in where you didn't even realize the gravity of your current emotions. This was one of those incidents. And I confess, I felt a little weepy before we started. I'd been sick. The younger 2 boys, our vandals, had been sick. Justin had been traveling. And I was just struggling with depression and anxiety of all things. And really and truly, that has not been an issue for me for a long time. But once we started recording on Nikki's panel, I just came undone. Also on the panel was a young widow and a single woman, also writers who I will link below. And as I listened to their struggles and coping mechanisms, all the feels came bubbling to the surface. By the end of the discussion, all I could do was crawl back into my bed and cry an ugly cry at the foot of the cross, which is probably the best place to be. I do have a tendency towards seasonal depression. Now, that has not been as bad since we moved further south, but in West Texas every year, actually, this is odd, but not just in the winter, but in the spring, when the wind blows in West Texas, I kind of lose my mind. But for the most part, I'm a peppy girl. I love life. I love my family. I'm crazy about Jesus. And we've talked about this before. For years, I believed that when I was struggling, the struggles, whether chemical or physical ailments, any of those things, I counted those struggles as a lack of belief and a testimony to my faithlessness. I just believed that if I was better, if I believed more, if I was harder at it, that none of those things would happen. And I really feel like this was encouraged by hellfire and brimstone teachings that in my weakness, God punished me, which goes against the truth that when I'm weak, He is most strong, which basically means you guys are completely covered because I'm weak and a mess a lot of the time, which means He's like a powerhouse. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love Jesus and sometimes I need a prescription. I am most convicted of this. You cannot let Jesus down, friends. One year you could be full on and you might bake Christmas cookies for the masses, spend hours in meditation on the glory of Advent. You might build an apartment complex for the homeless out of gingerbread and candy canes. And another year, you might not even be able to put on Christmas socks without first taking an Ativan. And you know what? Jesus is still Jesus. He still was born in the poorest and most dangerous of scenarios. He still grew in wisdom and glory. He still suffered, died, and was buried. He still rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures, and He will still come again. He died so that we might live. You might be in the darkest season of your existence, and He called you blessed. You may be at the highest place in your life. Perfection may be oozing from your pores. Praise Him for that space. Know He is for you and with you here, and He will not be moved no matter what. My grandma Mickey, my Dad's mom, in her home, she was by all accounts Grandma Christmas. Christmas at my Grandma Mickey's was the epitome of Christmas bliss. She had a Christmas village with automated ice skaters and fake snow. She baked and candied everything she could get her hands on. She made delightful hand-sewn gifts, quilts, scarves, placemats, and teddy bears. Until we were teenagers, we had the elves and fairies Christmas tea, and it was actually a Christmas Eve tea, I think she called it, but she set up a little table and chairs and served sweet goodies on tiny china. And we sang by the fire, and because it was in Utah, Christmas was also always white. Even as a young child, I appreciate the effort she went to, and I was stunned by her abilities, and I am grateful for those memories. I do want my children and family to have a happy holiday. I do want them to remember me fondly. However, I am not Grandma Mickey. I have her eyes, her stubborn Norwegian jawline, and my eyebrows are increasingly more and more like hers, which is a little bit scary, but I cannot sew. I do have a Christmas village. I have resolved to display the village every other year. Wait, I said that last year when I didn't put it up, and it's not going up this year. So maybe every other 2 years or as my abilities allow. And it isn't that it's hard to put it up. It's actually kind of easy to put it up. But the last time it was up, our son, the Marine baby, was home. And our foster love, Joy baby, was still in our care. And things were just a little bit easier than they have been the last 2 years. I know where the Christmas village is. And should the mood arise, I will put it up and rejoice and grieve. The thing I think is most hard about the box of treasure that you pull out that box of treasures and it only comes out once a year. It is loaded with memories. I have 2 friends that have had incredibly hard years this last year. One of them, her marriage ended after nearly 20 years. And this year she brought out her Christmas box to decorate, and she promptly put it right back and went to Walmart and bought all new ornaments because she couldn't face the memories, betrayal, or loss. The other friend, lost a child this year to drug overdose. It was very, very sad, still is very sad. It took her 3 days to finish decorating. She chose to deal with each item in the box. Her other children and her husband grieved, celebrated, and grieved some more. And it was treacherous, and it was also cathartic. This is what both of my friends had to do to cope with what they're faced with this year. One of my readers emailed me recently requesting prayer. Last year, 2 days before Christmas, she gave birth to a long-awaited baby boy, and he lived for 12 days before returning to the arms of Jesus. Christmas to her this year is just unbearable. Someone suggested to her that she focus on Advent instead of on her baby, and this left her feeling guilty and overwhelmed because she just can't. She can't do it. She tried, and then she was kind of left feeling like she'd somehow let God down because she couldn't do that, because she just couldn't face it. But here's the thing. Focusing on Advent could be a great way to deal with your holiday hurts. It's a good suggestion in some cases. But remember this. It's just a suggestion. Again, I say to you, no matter how you celebrate or boycott this season, Jesus is still Jesus. He was still born in the poorest and most dangerous of scenarios. He still grew in wisdom and glory. He still suffered, died, and was buried. He still rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures, and he still will come again. If your cookies are store-bought or made from scratch, Jesus is still Jesus. If you wrap every single handmade gift with hand-stitched paper and hand-tied bows, he was still born in the poorest and most dangerous of scenarios. If you trim your tree with old memories or donate your memory-laced ornaments to the local shelter because your husband was a creep, he still grew in wisdom and glory. Friend, if you open your home to the unloved and unwanted or lock the doors and hide under the covers and heave ugly cries, he still suffered and died and was buried. He still rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures, and he still will come again. He loves you no matter what you're facing and no matter how you are dealing with it. This God we celebrate does not love on contingency. He loved unto his death. He did not do this with the imagery that you had to hang mistletoe. He did this so you could live with the hope of a life perfectly decorated with peace, love, and promise. His birth is not the only reason we celebrate. The entirety of his life is. He did this so that you could love with the hope of a life perfectly decorated. Again, I say it, perfectly decorated with peace, love, joy, and promise. We are counted righteous by our belief in Jesus. And yes, he is big enough to handle the stages of grief and the seasons of doubt. Here's the thing. If this season is a season of ick for you, do not add to the struggle by piling guilt on top of your hurt. That is a gift you can give yourself. Take that off the list. Take it off the list. And then reevaluate your list. Celebration is just that. And if I have said it once, let me say it again and again. Let me never tire of saying it. Grief is actually a celebration of a loss. By no means am I suggesting that it won't ease up and that the weight of that loss has its place. But I am saying you're doing just fine. You are wholly adored by a God who knows what you are lacking. He is with you and he's for you. Miles from here, 2,000 years ago, he was born to die so that you might live. He offers you nothing but grace. You are not failing him or your family if you order apple pie from the local bakery instead of making it from scratch. Christmas cards are not a part of Jewish law, which we are not under anyway. You do what you can, leave what you can't for another season, and trust him to fill in the gaps. Ask for help from those who know and love you. Verbalize that which is unbearable. Speak up for the place where you are and invite those who can to help you. That's what this season is about. And then maybe next year you can do it for somebody else. I probably said this story here, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it in again. But about the man in the flood. And a man was trapped on his roof. And if he didn't get rescued soon, he'd be swept away and drowned by raging waters. And a rescue boat came and he said, "No, thank you. I'm waiting on God to save me." And another boat came by and he denied it and said, "Well, I'm waiting on the Lord to save me." And finally a helicopter came and he argued, "Go on ahead. I'm waiting for God to save me." And the flood waters rose and he was swept away and he drowned. So when he got to the pearly gates and met God, he said, "Lord, why didn't you save me?" And God said, "I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. Why didn't you take the help I offered?" All this to say, look for the rescue boat, watch for the helicopter, and by no means let yourself be drowned by a Yuletide flood. There are a billion scenarios where you can ease up on yourself and still produce fruit, even when you don't feel very merry and bright. In the scope of Christmases past, present, and future, they will come and go, friend. Your consistency in them may falter, but our God never does. He never fails you. And the way that we celebrate Christmas in this Western culture is delightful, but it doesn't have to be a burden because it's not part of what makes you a believer or a Christian. It is not the saving grace. Jesus Christ was your saving grace. I picked this scripture for today. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, which is from Isaiah 9:6. Fall into his arms. Take the guilt off of how you're feeling. I think this is so important because if guilt isn't part of the struggle, it's really quite a relief to just deal with the emotions that you're dealing with instead of piling on top of the emotions you're dealing with. "Oh, I'm letting everybody down," or "This is supposed to be a happy season and I'm not happy. This is the season I'm supposed to focus on Jesus and I'm not doing that." Take that off the table. It's just not even there. There is no condemnation in Christ. There's conviction, and you might be convicted. You know what? I think I am going to make cookies, or I think I am going to try and do this thing, even though it's not exactly what I want to do right now, but I'm going to do it for my kids or whatever. Allowing self-sacrifice or taking that extra step might help get you out of the fog. But if you can't, don't add guilt to it because you're not in trouble with Jesus for not going Christmas caroling. You cannot disappoint him. You cannot let him down, and you cannot be separated from this God who loves you. I'll read it again. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, which is from Isaiah 9:6. I'm Jami Amerine, and this has been another episode, God willing, of Sacred Ground Sticky Floors podcast. Today's podcast was brought to you by independent beauty consultant Jennifer Willerton. Her link is in the show notes. Do me a favor, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. The more reviews, the better people might find this program. And in other news, you can now go to my Etsy shop and buy a companion worksheet for this episode and printable downloads with quotes, scriptures, and encouragement mentioned above. And some of it's decorated so you can print it out and stick it in your purse or give it to somebody else. But a portion of all of our purchases in our Etsy shop benefit Upbring, an amazing nonprofit organization benefiting foster care, foster to adopt, and foster care reform. And the podcast downloads are just $3, so I'll be putting those up at the same time that this launches. I think you'll find they're very helpful way to process some of what we talked about today, and they're awfully pretty too, and then they benefit this foster care reform. So just visit www.etsy.com/shop/Jami Amerine Studio. Go to the download section and you will see season 2, episode 1 there. Until then, I will see you next time. I hope. This has been kind of nuts, but I'm here. I got it done. So check. And I don't feel guilty. I just feel happy that I got to visit with you. So until next time, Jesus be all over you, my loves. See you next time.